I just use my right off my laptop, and then I bring it in and I adjust the audio in iMovie.
Nice.
And I'm done.
I heard you can actually do some good stuff in iMovie.
Yeah. I mean, depends on what you're looking for. It's not quality like this, but it gets the job done.
Yeah, these ones changed a lot for us. We had at one point just some like $30, $50 mics.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they got the job done, but I had to mess with the audio quite a bit to get them to sound good because they didn't have any depth to them. They were very, very shallow type of recordings.
Okay.
I feel like you can hear the depth of my voice, which sounds like a 12-year-old boy, but it's okay.
I don't get 12-year-old boy when I hear a voice.
Yeah.
She thinks she sounds like a 12-year-old boy.
I feel like I do, and that's why I try not to listen to myself. I've gotten better with listening to myself recorded, but in the beginning, like, I would not listen to myself. I could not do it. I was like,
nobody likes their own voice.
No, I was like, this is so disgusting. I hate the way I sound. And then you have like someone like Carrie, who like her voice is fantastic.
I know.
And it's butter.
And she didn't know it.
No, she didn't.
Now she knows.
Yeah.
Now she adds a little. And then. I'm going to tease her about that, actually.
Yeah. No, just make sure you send her this episode. If this makes it into the cut, I have no idea if it will or not. But have her listen to this episode. But we can kind
of up to our editor.
Yeah, we do have one of those now.
Oh, do you?
Connor was dying. Like, he was actually...
I wasn't keeping up with stuff at all. I was like...
Yeah.
I was watching his soul, like, diminish, like, every single week. And it was like he was hardly a man anymore.
Yeah.
And I said, this is a problem. And we found a closeted conservative who shall remain nameless.
A young person?
A young person,
all
yes.
Right. We got to find him.
Yeah, he says, no, I'm in the closet. And I'm like, fair enough. And our manager knew him, and so he's been doing that for us, and that has and for us, like, this video for him is super easy to do.
Yeah, he can. Most of these, if there's not any issues, he can knock it out in probably 30 minutes, and most of that's processing time on the video.
Yeah. But
he's quick,
us,
and he's figured out, it's a pretty easy format.
Yeah. It hasn't gotten too complicated. I think once it gets more complicated, maybe we start throwing him some extra money.
Probably.
But that's another conversation for another day.
We can talk about closet vax people coming out of the closet.
Yeah.
What, say that again?
The vax.
The vax people. Your mic is slowly dropping. I am noticing this.
Oh, it's going down?
It is.
Oh.
Yeah. Loosen that up and then tighten that wheel.
Yeah, because I thought so too.
Yeah, no, it was dropping and your voice was dropping. I was like, this isn't good.
All right, how about that? I'm going to stick here.
Yep, that's good.
Okay, because I feel better now.
Yeah, see, I feel better about you too. I like it.
Yeah.
Wait, but closeted vax people.
Yes.
Is that's where we were?
That is a conversation we can have if you want.
Yeah,
so that is people coming out of the closet about the truth about the vaccine who have credibility to talk about it.
Yeah.
Ooh, I like that definition.
Yeah. Do you now, Chad? We're going to talk about this, but you got to tell us. At least the audience doesn't really know. We kind of know, but you have to tell us a little bit about who you are before we get into this conversation, because that's going to be important.
Yep. Are we recording?
Yeah.
We're recording.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, we like a nice.
See, you didn't even know.
Yeah. Okay. We like a smooth entrance.
Okay. All right. Let's go.
Yeah. Tell us, who are you?
Chad Hawley. I first must say, I'm a strong Christian, have been my whole life. Mm-hmm. I've been married almost 25 years.
Congratulations.
It's awesome. I highly recommend it. Also, I have 4 phenomenal kids that I'm just in shock all the time how great they are, especially in this society of so many things that could go wrong. Mm-hmm. They're amazing. They're all different, and I love that about them. That's who I am. As a profession, I went over 20 years in the pharmaceutical industry. I got a bachelor's degree. I got a master's in business from Wayne State University. I'm originally from Michigan.
Same.
Are you?
Okay, what part of Michigan?
Why don't you tell me first?
Okay, so I'm in Lansing.
Yep, that's what I'm waiting for.
Yep.
Okay. So I don't know how to put my thumb backwards. I have to go like this then because I'm facing you. Yeah. But I'm from a town called Oxford, Michigan. Where
Pretty close. Pretty close.
Not far. But I went to undergrad at Western Michigan and then went to grad school at Wayne State in Detroit.
Okay. You went to Detroit. You went to the rough place.
Actually, I didn't. I went to the suburbs. They had a suburb satellite campus. So I skipped Detroit.
Yeah. My dad, he used to tell me, because he moved from Texas to Michigan, and he said, at least in Detroit, because he was there for a little bit, that like you would run red lights because you were literally scared someone's going to steal the tires off of your car.
Yes.
Like this was a legitimate fear.
And police supported that belief. And they would not pull you over for running the red light because they understood. And my dad moved from Texas to Michigan, by the way.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
Yeah. Yep. So so then my profession was I was in the pharmaceutical industry. I did a lot of really interesting roles. I was the first one in my family to ever go to college, or actually complete college. And when I got into the industry, it was phenomenal. I won every award that you could win in sales, and I was selected to be the national sales trainer for the second largest pharmaceutical company in the world, which was a really awesome experience. It was one of the best jobs I ever had. And it was highly competitive. They actually flew in 50 people just to compete for the interview. And they had a couple spots open. I won that spot. I taught pharmacology, which was really neat because I don't really have a strong science acumen, but I worked hard to get there. And so I did that role. I was in management. I did some kind of brand marketing training kind of thing. And I also have been an entrepreneur where I've started my own businesses and successfully. And so I'm a very creative person. One of the challenges of being in the pharmaceutical industry is so litigious that you have to follow every single rule to the T, which made it hard for someone like me because I was always thinking outside of the box. And oftentimes people didn't know what to do with me. My leaders in the company would be like, gosh, we got to use this guy, but you can't do that.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, what about if we do this? What if we say it like this? Or what if we create this? And FDA won't let us. So that's where I went for 20 years until everything changed when COVID came. A lot of people say that. For me, what changed was they came out with the mandates. And I knew better. And I was not going to just bury my head in the sand. All of my coworkers knew better. In fact, I don't even know if I know one person in the industry that supported the mandates inside pharma. And the reason that one of the main reasons they were able to get away with it and all of pharma went along with it, because years ago, when a product would come to market, usually the same company who made the medicine would also sell the medicine. Now there's research companies who make the medicine, they get good at it, and they get to a certain level, and they sell it to a pharmaceutical company, and they sell it. And so these business deals became imperative for success. As a result of that, if you went against so-called, quote, science, even though there was only 3 pharma companies that made the vaccine, if you went against it, you'd be kicked out of the industry. You would never get another business deal. And so it was ultimately a business decision to support it, even though the science was not there. And so it's just like anything in life. Like the Bible even says, the love of money is the root of all evil. So even in this industry, it was the love of money that you could follow the money trail and you will find the evil that was behind everything to do with it. So I stood up. I went all in. I went up against medical advisors. I went head to head in science. I used their own data against them, and they had nothing for me. They couldn't give me anything that supported their stance. So I went all in and I said, this is it. This battle came to me. I'm going to stand up for everyone that can't stand up, especially if I'm inside the industry. And I went for it. And so I left the industry, and I'm actually currently in process. I filed a federal lawsuit against a company called Neuroquin Biosciences. And I'm alleging discrimination, and I have, I believe, substantial evidence. Not only that, this is hot off the press. Just yesterday, I got a phone call, and I can't say their name yet because we haven't signed the paperwork, but I have a large national organization. This is a nonprofit company that helps people for religious freedoms, and they're attorneys.
Okay.
I can't share their name yet.
I feel like I have an idea, but
There's a couple.
yeah.
So this one called me. So there's some that you have to have state representation. So if you file in a certain state, you have to have those people be in those states. And that's what kind of sets you apart between the different groups. And this group called me yesterday and said, we heard about your case. We understand what you're doing, and we'd love to take you on. And the nice thing about it is it's on contingency basis. So that means I don't pay anything.
Ooh, that is nice.
And so I will be fully represented without any cost out of my pocket, which ultimately will cost the company that I'm suing a lot of money to defend it. And I'm not trying to be a jerk. What I'm trying to do is I want it to hit hard enough so that when this happens again, because it will happen again, they won't do that again because it'll cost them financially. And then that financial motivation will demotivate them from pushing something.
It's always the financial motivation. I think that's why you have the companies that go woke, and I think that's why they back off of it. If you can take away the money, they'll back away from a certain narrative pretty dang fast. But you mentioned this company. For clarification, did you ever work for this company? What was your connection to them?
No, so they reached out. I can't actually talk about the case right now, but I will. I'm actually going to be doing a docuseries. So I will tell you this much. They reached out to me proactively, and I was said in stone that I was the candidate. And because I wasn't vaccinated, they completely changed their mind and started interviewing someone else. So I'll say that much.
Okay. And that's what I was particularly curious about.
So that's discrimination.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would say so. What my question though is, I can't imagine like this just came out of nowhere, like within the industry. Like when COVID happened, like, do you look back at your career and be like, okay, I saw the signs here that there was potential, that this could have happened. Was there anything like that, or did it just like come out of the blue in your opinion?
COVID or
how the pharmaceutical industry was handling COVID-19?
Well, I loved pharma. I had a great run in pharma, and I had amazing people. And what I learned is it wasn't the day-to-day people. It was the very, very, very top was corrupt. It wasn't the people I worked with, because the people I worked with I loved. I mean, well, not loved, but I enjoyed working with them, and they were great people. And like I said, none of them agreed with this. So it was at the top that I saw the corruption. And this was like really opened my eyes for the first time. And because we all have medicine in our homes, so that's good because it does help us, some of us it hurts us. But if you have a headache or you're in pain, you can take something and it helps you. Hey, that came from the pharmaceutical industry. So I don't think I can say I saw it coming. I personally did not see it coming because I was in it, but I got a revelation once it happened.
Okay. Yeah. I was just curious because I feel like there's a kind of a term that I think the right throws out a little bit more, and I will admit my ignorance because this is not something that I don't know a ton about it, if I'm being honest. Not up until COVID-19, where I think there's the phrase big pharma.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And a lot of conservatives have now, because of COVID-19, they have jumped on the bandwagon of hating on it very, very strongly. It's gone much farther than, and I'm not trying to get into a whole thing because I don't have all the answers to it. I don't know. But the COVID-19 vaccine, and then you have, you have people, and I think Candace Owens started to lead this charge regarding vaccinations with children, not COVID-19 vaccinations, but just vaccinations in general, of saying how harmful that these are. Some saying that, this will cause autism in your child, a lot of stuff, and it's really confusing. I don't really know if I have a question for you in that, but I guess it's more just like what your thoughts are on it
So
in general.
Yes, some of that is true, and some of it I don't know. I really don't, because I'm only one guy. But I do know that pharmaceutical companies will try to buy out certain remedies that are effective for people just to shelve them so that people can't have them so that they can sell their medicine. I know that to be true. And that's dangerous.
I think that's been seen in the insulin industry.
It's seen in a lot of industries. And the another example, I don't have a problem with the word big pharma. What my problem was wasn't even anti-vax. I was anti-mandate. There was a big difference. Now with the stuff that's coming out, so as you know, you guys interviewed Dr. Robert Malone, and so did I, and it was a real honor because that was my field, and that was really important. I wanted to talk to him about courage, and he shared about courage, and he stood up and said a lot of really important things. What's going on now, when I actually finished that podcast, the amount of messages I'm getting from doctors and nurses and just people who are suffering greatly from taking the vaccine, not let alone losing their jobs and careers, but the health crisis that's associated now with the vaccines, and to know that it was mandated, that's my problem. And force these people. I had coworkers who their doctor said, do not take it. They took it. They were your age, and they ended up in the ER with myocarditis, and they almost lost their life. And so I was an advocate for those people and make sure there was documentation to show this is real. And then someone like Pfizer, the CEO of Pfizer, says, we have 0 red flags. Well, there you go. There's your corruption at the very top.
There's no medicine that doesn't have like some like listing of side effects, though. That's what's interesting. I feel like even if it's a good medication, I feel like there are always going to be something. So I think if you're saying with absolute certainty that, nope, there's no way, there's no way this could cause any sort of issue, that in itself,
there's your red flag.
That's the red flag, is saying that there's no problem.
You're right.
Which there probably is. I think of those commercials where it's like, I don't know, it's always like a montage of someone like being with their family, and then they're like listing every single side effect as fast as they possibly can. And that always scares the crap out of me, but I know some of those medications can be helpful, and it's a case-by-case situation. But for Pfizer or Moderna to do that is honestly, I think it's been a while since we've talked about the COVID-19 vaccine. And as we're talking about it, it makes me angry. And I am reminded, I think the one thing Robert Malone said that I did appreciate, he's like, don't lash out at the people on the bottom that really thought that this was a fantastic, great idea. Because it's easy to, because they were the ones that they wanted you to be mandated to take this back. And it's hard. And as a Christian, you're like, whew, it's like you want to, obviously, like, okay, I got to forgive them and understand that, they made a mistake, even if they won't admit it, because I think there's a lot of them that are now being very quiet about it, because they know that it was a mistake, and it takes a lot of humility, and we know this. It takes a lot of humility to admit when you're wrong, and people do not like to do that.
But here's the thing. Although that's a big topic for me because I'm in the industry, and I get it, some people, it's not a huge topic for them because they moved on with their life and things like that. What I enjoyed about my conversation with Dr. Malone that he said is that when he was in that situation, the first time he stood up for something great. And he said, he gave another example when he stood up in his life. And he said, at that point, Chad, I reinvented myself. And so that's what I did. So I stood up. It was hard. It was lonely. It was difficult. I lost friends. Co-workers would not talk to me anymore. They probably made assumptions. I heard about false rumors that were being said about me, and I had to let it go. But here's the thing, and this is what I'd love to talk about, is in those situations in life, what is your response? Can you, as a Christian, be in fire for God and also stand up to something like this at the same time? My answer to that is yes, because even Jesus overturned the tables in the temple, and then he walked out into the streets and healed the sick. And so that's where I'm at in my life, where I'm on fire for God. I'm also standing up to protect those who can't. And I can do both. It doesn't have to be one or the other. So that's when I reinvented myself and I fulfilled what I found to be my purpose of the next season of my life. And that's how I started the Nexus Mountain Network.
Yeah, and I see here you have a book on our counter that says "Purpose Will Save Your Life," and I see your name on it. So, did you start writing this book? Yeah, there you go. Come on, plug it. There you go. There you go. Good stuff there. So, I assume you started writing it because of what's happened over the past few years.
No.
So
this is different. This
is why I don't make assumptions anymore.
Yeah.
I can't.
So this has nothing to do with pharma. So this is a much deeper, more powerful story. A few years ago, I was diagnosed with cancer, and it got really bad. And it got to the point where I already had 2 surgeries, and I went through the process that a lot of people go through with having scans and biopsies and the fear associated with hearing it for the first time that you have cancer. And, I was married and 4 kids, all that kind of stuff. And then it got to a point where the doctor said, okay, after the second surgery, we're going to do another scan. And in that scan, 30 days later, we're going to do a scan after the second surgery. If we find something there, that's not good. It could be it.
Yeah.
So 30 days later, he gives me a call. And up to this point, I had such great faith. I had so much peace. The Bible says peace that passes all understanding. I had it. I was sleeping at night. I don't know how. It had to have been God. And so he called me and says, Chad, I'm sorry, but it's already spread. And I was like, crap.
Yeah.
I'm going to die now? That's kind of feels too soon. And so I went for a couple of days. I went into a deep depression. And then I reached out to the Lord and I said, God, why did you create me? If he gave me an answer, then I could hold him accountable for fulfilling it and keeping me alive. Because I had already tried everything myself. I'd seen wonderful miracles of healing and different things in my life, and yet it hadn't happened for me. And so I got this idea I thought was from God. And the idea was I was going to create a Christian-based social network. And it was going to organize Christians in society outside of the 4 walls of the church by what this idea called the 7 mountains. And the 7 mountains are education, business, media, family, religion, arts and entertainment, and government. I think I got all 7. And so what I did was I took this idea and I went on my computer and I made a movie trailer. On my computer, it was 1.5 minutes. I wrote a script. I did voiceover, editing, animations, sounds. And I took this video and I submitted it to my inner circle of people. And I said, agree with me, I'm going to live and not die. And I'm going to fulfill this purpose. Well, my health, after I did that, changed dramatically. I was supposed to get chemo, radiation, and a 3rd surgery to take out part of my tongue just to keep me alive. And I got none of it. I ended up going to MD Anderson in Houston, Texas. And the short version is the doctor looked at me and said, there's nothing wrong with you. Go home. I was stunned. My wife was stunned. It was a wild story and experience. It was so powerful. It set me up for my purpose. And that's why I have a book called Purpose Will Save Your Life. Because knowing my purpose literally saved my life. And so that's where the book comes from. And so what I do is in the book, I take this story as a foundation and I take my professional experience as a professional development trainer in the pharmaceutical industry. And this is a guide for someone who says, I know I have more to life, but I'm not sure exactly what to do about it. This book helps walk you through what to do about it. It has powerful stories. I integrate technology in here with QR codes to worksheets that we created or videos or there's a couple miracles in here of fascinating things that happen, like blind eyes being healed, and I videotaped it. But if it was just in the book and someone read it, they might go, But if you there's a QR code that takes you to see it.
That's cool. I haven't seen
then
that
people
before.
go, oh, it's kind of like that goes to another level. And so they begin to believe, and it increases their faith. So that's where this comes from. And so that's where I started the Nexus Mountain Network a few years later, which was last year. And that's what catapulted my life into a whole nother stratosphere of purpose. And that's how I reinvented myself.
Well, Chad, I think that was good. That sounded good, right? Yeah, I think, I have a lot of different thoughts. One, the idea of, and I don't know if this is what you planned on talking about, the idea of miracles, I think it's a very interesting idea in Western society, because you have like the new narrative with COVID, right, that says trust the science, and the emotion behind that for most people is because you are deeply fearful and you need something to latch on to. And so you latch on, and some people latched on real hard to Dr. Fauci. I don't like the guy, but it happened, all right? And I understand why it happened. I get it.
Yep.
And so it's like, okay, if we follow this formula, if we just do what everyone tells us to do, we're going to be okay. Miracles, though, they're interesting because they fly in the face of that.
Yep.
It's, you're fearful, but your faith has to increase so much. And I firmly believe God's the one that increases it. I really, because I've tried to do it on my own to have faith, and it does not work. I ask God, and He gives it to me. I'd like your thoughts on that. The idea of miracles in a society where it's so spiritually dead.
Yeah, and I think that's a great topic, and I think it's the miracles that we see that will transform lives, that people go, that's real. I remember I just told my daughter this yesterday. I told her the first time I saw something supernatural. And I was probably her age, and I was probably 14 years old, and we were going to a church, and this minister, his name was John Bevere. He has a huge ministry now, but then I don't know if he did. And he came to our church, and he was talking, and he looked, and he pointed to a girl in the audience that I kind of liked. And she's probably, I think, maybe 16. I was 14. She was a little bit older. And he says, you young lady, come here. Come up here. And so she went to the front of the church, and John had this microphone attached, a little lapel microphone, so you could hear him. And I don't know if he forgot to turn it off or not, but he went up to the young girl, and he says, in the name of Jesus, and you could hear it through the whole auditorium. He goes, I command you to come out. And all of a sudden, this girl who I thought was cute, like almost contorted. And her voice changed, and she screamed, no. I was like, it was way more than what I just did in the microphone. I didn't want to blow yours out.
Yeah, we appreciate that. Thank you.
So I did it in a calm way. And I was like, there is no way her voice could even get to that level on her own. And it was my first, even though it wasn't a miracle, in a way, it was a miracle because she was being delivered. But the first thing I saw was actually a demon. And I was like, wait a minute, if demons are real, that means there's an opposite. And the opposite's greater. And that was my first aha moment as a child. And then throughout my life, I was like, okay, so I'm going to pursue this, and I'm going to believe for this, and I'm going to put myself in situations that I'm going to believe for it. And so as a result of that, I started, the gifts that were in me, I started to see things more. I started to literally dream things that were in the future. And when I arrived in a situation, I knew exactly what to do about it, and I could operate with great faith because I had already seen it in my dreams. So one of the examples in my book is actually one of the chapters is, Father, show me what you're doing. And when Jesus was on earth, when he did this healing of an impotent man, and he said that I only do what I see my Father show me. And it gave us a clue to say, okay, well, why don't we just ask him to show us ahead of time? So I started praying, Father, show me what you're doing. And I had this example where there was a minister that came to our church, and she had a gift for healing for deaf ears. Mm-hmm. And she had prayed for a lot of deaf ears, and they opened. And she was in another foreign country, which you hear, foreign country, they do so much more than here, right? And so there was a boy in our church, and I went to get him out of the children's church. I picked him up and carried him to the big church because she was praying for people, and I wanted him to hear. So by the time I got to the stage, I carried him up there, she had to leave. So she never got to pray for him. And I was like, oh man, I was so disappointed because I thought, well, she had to be the one to pray for this boy to be healed. Well, then that night I had a dream. And in my dream, I prayed for this boy and he was healed. And so I told the Lord, I said, if you give me an opportunity, I will act that out. So the next Sunday, this boy came up for prayer to me for his ears. And so because I already saw it in my dream, I had faith. This is kind of like what you're talking about. I had the faith to act on it. And I went up to this boy, and there was music playing. And I asked his mom if I could take his hearing aids out after praying for him. She said, yeah. And I turned him around and made him face the opposite wall of me with music playing. And after done praying for him, I said, if you can hear me, raise your right hand. And his right arm went up. And I looked over at his mom, and she was like, what? And I was kind of like, what?
You're like,
myself.
wait, that's like, that actually worked.
I'm like, oh my
gosh,
cool. This is great. I was so excited for everybody.
I'm sure the entire place was just kind of like.
Well, no, this was a private kind of private office. Yeah, it wasn't in front of anyone. It was kind of.
Okay, I didn't know it was.
It was in the front of the church, but not in front of people. And I was like, well, if that worked, all right, if you can hear me. And I was talking like this. I said,
you're not shouting.
Left hand. No. I said, if you can hear me, raise your left hand. And then his left hand went up. And then we realized he could hear. And so it was a phenomenal thing to see that God still does these things. And I think that this generation who, they're being indoctrinated with all kinds of stuff, but if they get a touch or revelation of the supernatural world, they'll never go back because they're like, that's what's real, not this other stuff I'm being fed.
Well, there's an interesting, and I'm not going against what you're saying. I'm just going to actually almost go against what I just said a moment ago because you were talking and I realized something. We are spiritually dead in the sense that we're not in touch with the Lord. But I do actually think we're very spiritually alive in the demonic realm. I believe Western society, we have a lot of that going on, and we don't even realize it.
Yeah.
Because I think I was watching this YouTube video of this YouTube influencer that I followed for a while, and basically she was like, yeah, my biological father kidnapped me, and I played with a Ouija board with my friends, and that opened the realm for the devil. And she was basically describing a lot of miraculous things. She's like, Lord, if you're here, can I get out of this psychotic trip that I'm in? And those are pretty bad. It was a good good episode, found the Lord, all that stuff. But I think you have a lot of young people that they don't realize it, but they are pretty in tune with something spiritual.
Yeah.
And it is the demonic realm. And they think it's a joke.
Yeah.
There was a bookstore I was at where they're selling a Ouija board, ages 8 and up, family-friendly game. That's insane.
Yeah.
It's insane. And they think that they're just playing around. So if the demonic realm is that strong, then, like you said,
there you go.
There has to be someone that can deliver. And that's the thing about that girl's story is like, the demonic realm was strong, but God was stronger and brought her out of that. But I also think there's another thing that, as you were talking, I thought was an important note, is that I think there's a lot of people that just want the miracle, and they don't want the work that comes with it. I would assume you are, and you're not perfect, but a prayerful man, yes?
I am, but I'm not what some people would call an intercessor. Like some people love to pray all the time. I don't do that all the time. I should. I'm more
as do we all.
I'm an obedient guy where I'm like, Lord, show me, and then I do it.
And that's what I'm trying to say, though, is that, and I'm not trying to toot your horn or anything, because we all have things that we need to get better at. But what I am trying to say is that you have a relationship with the Lord.
Yes.
And there are some people that they want the miracle, but they don't want the relationship. And it's like, it doesn't work like that. In order to know and hear God and work for him, you have to have an intimate relationship with him.
Sometimes. And that's the beauty of grace, is you don't earn it, you don't deserve it. And so, like, for example, there's many things in my life that I have gotten because I've chosen to obey and have faith in God. No question. There's other times, I'll give you an example. When I was going through cancer, I was at a church service and I was sitting way in the back. This is a cool story. And it's also in my book, and inside there's a video of this. So I'm in the service. There's probably about 800 people. I'm sitting in the back, and where I'm sitting is very dark. And the minister, his name's Dr. Mahesh Chavda. He's standing up there, and he says, in the spirit, he says, I see gold falling. And he's just like, kind of like this. And him and his wife, Dr. Bonnie Chavda, have a history of, they were actually ministering for years. And sometimes the manifest glory of God would appear as like gold, which is phenomenal.
Interesting.
So he said that, and he kind of kept preaching, and I'm sitting in the back, and I'm going through a tough time. And I lean forward in my seat, and I look back, and I'm like, what is that? And on my seat, gold was like, they're like specks of gold were covered on my seat. And it was kind of like flickering, because it was like kind of dark, but still hard to see. And I was like, what? Wait a minute. I'm like, wait a minute. And so I called a couple of the people to verify. I'm like, do you see this? What's going on? And there wasn't a single speck on the seats next to me. They were all butted up against each other. It was just this seat. And so during the service, I text the pastors, and they said, yeah, this is a sign from God. And the reason why it was awesome was because I didn't do anything to deserve it. And what God was doing was he was highlighting, because we used to do street ministry for 4 years. And we would go out and we would just love on people. We'd pray for people. Some people would get healed. Some people would turn their life to God. And one of the things we often would say to people is, we are out here tonight because he's highlighted you. The reason we're running into you tonight is because he's making himself known to you, that he knows you, he loves you, and he wants to do something for you. And so you're highlighted. So I interpreted this moment of gold being on my seat as the Bible talks about signs and wonders, or the chapter of my book says signs that make you wonder, because you're wondering right now what I just said. And it's a sign that God was highlighting me, and I did nothing to deserve it. So there is definitely both in this.
I think that's fair. I think that's a fair situation, Connor.
Yeah, did you try collecting the gold afterwards?
That's a great question. No, I was so excited. I was like, look, but I did videotape it. I said, look. And so, yeah, I can show you guys the video too. So
yeah, now you'll have to, maybe we'll get your book and we'll get the QR code so that we can.
Yeah, I'll give you the QR code before I leave.
So that we can watch it. But it sounds like you've had a very interesting life that's now led you to this point, and just kind of getting back a little bit to where you are now, and just kind of ask, what does the immediate future look like for you? Because you've talked about Nexus a little bit. You've talked about this lawsuit. Where do you hope to see those things go?
So I'm focused on my purpose. I'm focused on being obedient to God, and whatever that is, I will do. Where I think that's taken me is I do own a business, and I think the Lord is putting favor upon it so that I can ultimately do the Nexus Mountain Network. I think that's what he's put in front of me. I know that's what he's put in front of me. I have so many stories to tell you, that angel encounters to wild prophetic things that led me to Nexus. And so we're doing a strong emphasis on the Nexus Mountain Network. There's a lot of favor upon it. More and more people are becoming more aware of what we're doing. And we're doing events, we're doing local events, and we're doing a big event coming up in June. That's going to be a big one-day summit with a lot of leaders. And so we're empowering people to engage in society, and it's going to make a difference for what God's called us to do. And so that's a big thing. So I'm launching a book, and we're doing a training for it.
So this book is not out yet?
It is out.
Okay, it is out.
So you can get this book now at nexusmountaintnetwork.com. It's also on Amazon.
Oh,
so if you want to go to Amazon, you can do that too. Nexus Mountain Network, if you go there, I'll sign the book when we send it out. So we handle the shipping through nexusmountaintnetwork.com.
Cool. We'll put it in our description so that people can get it if they want.
Oh yeah.
Yep. So so that's where we're heavily focused. That's where God is calling us as a family. We're ministering as a family, which is a whole family. And I'll be honest, we've been through some major hell and spiritual battles to get to where we are now. It just didn't come. We had to fight like mad just to get through it. But because we laid a foundation for so many years, the Lord delivered us. That's
great. That's awesome. Another question that popped up in my head, because this is a very, I'd say, very Christian, spiritual heavy episode, which I'm all about. I'm all for it. But I know we have those in the audience that would not be Christian, or even if they are Christian, doubtful. And I can definitely see some of the eye rolls, miracles, whatever, man. Yeah. Like, what's wrong with you? Like, people say this stuff, you're making it up, or you're just kind of exaggerating it. You just want attention. What would you say to someone like that?
I would say that if you've been through what I've been through, you would know what I know, and you would say what I say. And trauma will do that to you. And because of that and how the Lord rescued me, I would not be alive. And so what else am I to say? What else am I to say to someone but say, be the testimony that says, God saved me. Mm-hmm. And yes, I'm ordained, but I'm not a pastor. I'm not even trying to grow a church. I'm not trying to raise money. I'm not doing any of that. In fact, when I built the Nexus Mountain Network, my first thought was I was going to build it like a business, and I was going to take the profits and I was going to give it back to the people so that they can climb their mountains. You guys are in media. You guys would be an ideal people to say, let's come alongside these young people who are taking risk and putting themselves out there and going for it, taking steps and doing Resident Skeptics podcast. Like, those are the type of people we want to help grow. And that's when I very first met you guys. I was so excited to meet you because of what you were doing, and I was proud of you for doing it. And so I don't have any hidden agenda. So I built this, and I felt like the Lord said, because we have this app. So it's the Nexus Mountain Network app. You can get it on the App Store, Google, and everything's free. Mm-hmm. And so when I built it, I had to. This technology is not cheap. You can go Google how much an app costs. But when I did it, I felt like the Lord say, do this unto me and for my people. And the money you spend on the technology, I want you to see it as a sacrifice. So I said, okay. And I did it. So the other thing, what I would say to people who might be skeptic, since we're on a Resident Skeptic podcast, if you are skeptic, how's it going for you? How is your way of thinking going for you? How is your belief system going for you? Do you have peace? Do you have love? Do you have unconditional love? Do you have assurance? Are you confident that what you're doing in life is what you were created to do? That's something to consider.
Yeah. And, they have to answer those questions for themselves. We can't answer it. Yep. Even in our own lives. Even as a Christian, we still have to always continue to realign where we're at, always looking at that and asking, are we God-centered or self-centered? Mm-hmm. But no, I agreed with what you said there, because I think to some people that that aren't Christians, like, it is going to sound like gobbledygook. It will. And then there's and there's really nothing that you can do about that because the Spirit's not receptive to it. That's okay.
Yeah.
Hopefully you plant a seed in that. Connor, do you have anything?
I don't think so. I mean, it's the spiritual talk is interesting to me because I grew up a lot in it, but leaving it was partially because the people that we knew were just chasing after it all the time. That's what they wanted, miracles. They wanted miracles. Study the Bible, not so much. Spend time in prayer, to get miracles. So it's just like that's what they would chase, and it was one of the more. For me, it was one of the disheartening things about the church is that if you had somebody come in with a prophetic word, they would pack out. The overfill would pack out. People would be outside the church. They're like, I just want to get a word, somehow get this guy's attention. And then it would be like, okay, well, we're gonna have a Bible study on a Saturday morning. We're gonna read through it, through the year, and 6 people would show up, and that was the typical. That was what would happen. Yeah. So for me, I kind of just got chased out of it because everybody, that's all they would go after. Yep. And I don't know, it wasn't for me. I think it really came down to, your experience with the gold dust. And I've heard a lot of other stories like it. And I usually call BS on them because people are just looking for it. They're praying for it. Some of the videos I've seen is like, there's like, you can see the sparkles coming down on the stage. And I'm like, okay, I know they've got overhead, they've got catwalks up there, but in a situation where you're not looking for it and you're not anywhere near front and center stage, there's to me, there's a distinct difference between people that are seeking out miracles and those who they just happen to. Yeah. Those are the ones that always have seemed a bit more authentic to me.
I think it's a really good point. I'm glad you share that because that we have like the next generation, and I don't blame them. They're turned off by church. Yeah. But if they really experience God, then maybe they won't be turned off because they're looking for authenticity. And, I mean, there's this thing called, some people call it the religious spirit. I don't like to use that word because religion in itself is good. Christianity is religion. The problem is I think what they're trying to say is like a self-righteous spirit where they just do these things that they think that makes them Christian. That's why the whole thing about Nexus is actually outside of the church. And it's like what we do is missionary work. We do street evangelism. We try to get people to teach people how to have conversations in the business place. If you're at a convention and you're talking to other people who are doing podcasts, we try to help you have a real conversation to someone who's hurting. And that's the thing. So if you're hurting and you're in pain or you have a suffering for something and you need hope, there is hope. There's hope in Jesus. And so, and if we can bring a prophetic word to a person who's never even heard of prophetic words, and you can walk up to them and say, I really feel like this and this and this is something that's going on in your life. And they go, whoa, what? How do you know that? That to me is so much more rewarding because now it's something they may never forget. And it's just like I told you that story about when I was a kid and I saw this girl manifest demonically. I never forgot it. And now I think I'm 47. And I never forgot it. It made an impression on me. So those things can make impressions on people that hopefully ultimately turn them that there's more to life and I need to find out what that is.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I'm glad Connor brought that up because I was kind of trying to bring up something a little bit under the same vein of that. Of you do have people that are they're just seeking after the miracle and they don't really want the God that comes with it. And I did agree with you too, but God is gracious and He reaches us even when we don't want to be reached. I think Paul is a great example of that. So God's grace works in those situations. But I think what can kind of turn people off to this idea that there is this spiritual realm is, to be honest, a lot of fakers. And what a lot of fakers like to do, at least from what I've seen, is they like to publicize it. They really like to publicize it. I think there's one guy that he's on Instagram and he videos every single time he lets a demon out, I suppose. And I've heard the stories that you have, and I haven't seen any, which I to a certain extent, I'd kind of like to. But when I hear about demons, it's the same of like impossibly strong, insanely deep voice, like insane stuff that cannot be explained. It's demonic.
Yep.
And so I watched these videos of this guy taking out these demons. It did not look real. I'm just the discernment of like, this is not how it happens. And so you have people like that, and then you have people like, you see, that stuff's fake.
Yeah.
And they're half right.
Yeah.
But I think that there does come a level of discernment, and I think it is that one-on-one, like when you have someone's like, hey, I wasn't even looking for a prophetic word, and you gave it to me. How on earth did you know that? Like, there's no way you could have known. I think that starts a different conversation. That's why I think, at least when I listen to you, I see sincerity, and I see that like you're walking with the Lord, and that makes me much more comfortable being like, yeah, I believe this. And I grew up differently than Connor. Mm-hmm. You grew up more Pentecostal. I grew up Baptist.
I didn't know this.
Yeah.
I'm glad I didn't know ahead of time.
Yeah. I grew up Baptist, and we were very, very theology heavy. Like that was definitely the thing. And there was a emphasis on reverence to God. Good things, by the way. Reverence is good. But the intimate part wasn't taught as deeply. And so I've become much more comfortable with the more, I don't even want to say Pentecostal, but just spiritual as I've gotten older, because I've realized how real it is and how reverence and intimacy do go together. Yeah. And I'm pretty young still. I'm pretty young.
Yes, you are.
I'm very young, so I'm still learning about that stuff, and that's why I do like to talk to people like you. Not that you're old, Chad. You're not old. You're just
I do have the nickname Cool Dad Chad. So
Cool Dad Chad. How old is your youngest kid?
He's 12.
Who's 12? Okay, so you still got the young there. You still got it going.
Well, my oldest isn't 20, so.
How old is your oldest?
20.
20. Okay, you're still in the. I would still say that's kind of the youngish phase, because I feel like
I'll take it.
Because here's why
it's under 50, so that's good.
Yeah. Well, here's why I say this, because Connor's going to be 30.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I feel like that to me, not that that's old Connor, but it's like you're like an older adult kid. You know what I'm saying? Like
he's got a great beard right now.
He does.
I mean, this is a really, really good beard right now. Actually, your hair and the beard looks good. You almost look like a disciple of Jesus.
Almost.
Yeah, I usually get that or terrorist.
No, I don't see terrorist. I see you could be in.
That's what I normally
The Chosen.
get. It's like, you look like you could play Jesus or a terrorist, either one.
Yeah, you definitely look like you could be one of his disciples.
Did you see Jesus Revolution?
I did.
Did you like it?
I did.
I liked it too.
One of the things that I saw it with, this was cool. I actually liked who I saw it with. Mm-hmm. And I won't say their names, but there was someone, and him and his wife are prominent in ministry. And there was me and my wife. And then there was my daughter and her boyfriend. Mm-hmm. And I loved watching it with them because I saw all of us as characters in the movie. And some of the people that were in the movie, the person I was with, like I knew her, I knew him. Mm-hmm. But I could say, he was that person and she was that person. And I enjoyed the experience as much as I enjoyed the movie.
Yeah. No, I think that's why I kind of agree with you on that, because I didn't do exactly the same thing, but I went and saw it with my boyfriend. And the thing that I liked about the movie, we wrote a review on it on Resident Skeptics. But what I liked about it is that the characters were real. It wasn't like this cheesy, corny movie where, you're saved, everything's great, yay! Right. Like it didn't go like that. It was like the main character, Laurie. I mean, he's a real person, but he's baptized. He goes into the water, like a really cool scene. He's in the water, like, oh wow, and it doesn't really happen like that all the time. But for the movie, I understand theatrics, and sometimes it does feel like that. But he comes out of the water, and he still like really struggles in his relationship. He kind of abandons his mom a little bit because he's like, no, I'm too committed to ministry. I can't. And so you can see like he's not perfect. Yeah. And I think that's a lot of the things that people have an issue with Christians. They have this idea that like, wait, why isn't the Christian perfect? They're supposed to be perfect. And it's like, I wish I could say that. And I wish I could say I'll never hurt another non-Christian, but I probably have. and I hate that I have. But I appreciate the rawness, and I could see myself in the characters. I could see my boyfriend in a lot of the characters.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm saying it's a relatable movie.
Yeah, I liked that. And, you know, even like in my life, I don't want to paint a picture that, I mean, there was several years of absolute hell. Mm-hmm. And it took, I can't even put in words how terrible it was. And people would say, man, your life has turned into like Job. And so, and I was walking with God to a certain level, but I failed in those moments. I failed terribly. But by the grace of God is what pulled me out. And that's why I want to serve him. Not because someone says I need to, but because he allowed me the grace and the long leash to stay the course. And when you experience grace and have a revelation of grace, even for the people who are skeptics, just throw out, don't listen to me about miracles. Just, what about the grace? Like true unconditional love? Who doesn't want unconditional love? And that's what God offers us. He offers his love unconditionally. And that alone, if that's all you focus on, is like, man, there's a God that loves me no matter what. Like we want moms and dads that want us to support us. And when I talk to younger people or someone who hasn't had a good parent and I want to minister to them, I don't minister this grandiose miracle thing. There's 3 things I focus on. And I was taught this. The first one is that speak right into the person and even look them in the eyes and say, on behalf of your heavenly Father in heaven, and you tell them, I love you. Number 1. Number 2, I'm proud of you. And number 3 is that I will be there for you when you need me. And that's what God does for us. And you can't put a price on that.